Alright, welcome back to another video. So today's video, I'm going to be showing the procedure to replace your receiver dryer on your 2003 Up Crown Victoria. So if you own a 2003 or later Crown Victoria, civilian model, police interceptor, doesn't matter, they have kind of a design flaw. And maybe all of a sudden your AC just stopped working, or it's been slowly, the performance is getting worse and worse. I'm going to kind of show you what Ford changed in 2003 and why it caused problems on these cars. So if I go ahead and pop the hood here, I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about. So obviously, you know, there's going to be many reasons that your AC doesn't work on a Crown Vic. I mean, you could have a leak in the system, you could have, you know, a bad compressor. There's a bunch of stuff that go wrong. But a common issue is what's called the receiver dryer, which on the 2003 Up Crown Vics, they moved it way down. You can see it's way down here. And on the old cars, it was over here. All right, so here's what it looks like, the assembly. And if you buy these non-Ford aftermarket, you'll see there's this little plastic housing here. That usually does not come with it. So you have to, you know, remove these clips and reuse the plastic housing. It'll just come with the metal. But I kind of, you know, you don't have to use the Motorcraft part in this case, but I usually, if I can get a good deal on the original OEM Ford parts, that's what I usually use. Especially when it comes to electronics, stuff like this isn't as big of a deal. I mean, this stuff's all made in China now instead of Canada like it used to be. So I don't think it's really that different, but you do get this case. So what happens is it's down there, and if you're in any kind of, you know, area of the country where they use salt on the roads, you know, water splashes down up in here, and then it gets trapped in this case right here. So if I go below the car, I can kind of show you what the problem is. All right, so here's the bottom here, and you'll notice there's a green fluid leaking out of the bottom of that case. So what that means is that on the inside of there, it's completely corroded with rust. And that green fluid is actually the oil that is in the AC system, and it's oozing out. And believe it or not, my AC still does kind of work. It's just getting low. It's got a very slow freon leak. But so even though it's leaking oil that bad, it still is not completely blown, but it's just a matter of time. So you can see the first bolt we need to take off, which is right here. That bolts into the frame. That's one of the bolts that we're going to have to remove. But that's usually what happens. This thing just fails inside. It gets so corroded, you don't even see what's going on because it's all that corrosion's trapped inside of that plastic case there. All right, so I've laid out all the tools we need to do this job. This is a very, very expensive procedure to pay a shop to do because they have to have kind of specialized equipment. But you can do this rather easily at home. With just a little bit of equipment. So I've got this cheap AC Manifold Gauge Set, which for this procedure, it's not 100% necessary, but it helps, and you'll see why. We're going to need the proper amount of Freon, so you don't need anything fancy. We just need R134A. You don't want any R134 that says it's got special leak inhibitors or special dyes. You just want straight, whatever's cheapest, R134A, which is what it calls for. You can see our charge levels printed right here. For this Crown Vic, it's 27 ounces. So these are each 12 ounces. So it's 2 cans is 24. So we need 2, and then a little bit out of this can. That's where we kind of have to guess. That's where our gauges kind of come into play. We'll talk more about that. So we'll need 3 cans total to do the system when it's completely empty. Depending on how much oil has been lost, we'll need to add oil if it does not come in here. And obviously we'll need, you know, a way to get our Freon into the system through the low side. And then this is a part or a step that a lot of people skip, and it's the biggest mistake you'll see on an amateur doing a job like this. You have to vacuum down the system. So the whole point of this part is to take moisture out of the system, because moisture inside your AC system will destroy it. It will destroy the compressor. And as soon as you open the system, or if it's got a leak, it's already open to the environment, moisture is now in there and it's causing damage. So if you just charge up the system, that moisture stays in there with the Freon and destroys your AC system. So when we use our vacuum pump, we're actually boiling off and drawing out all of the moisture in the system. And that is one of the most important steps to doing any kind of work on any AC system. So you can get a cheap one of these that runs off compressed air if you don't want to spend the money to have this, but I've done this job enough times that it was just worth it to buy this Harbor Freight vacuum line that connects right to our AC set here. Alright, so I'll put everything in the links description below that I use in the video, just in case it helps you out. Alright, so first step, like I said, if your system is empty, all your Freon's leaked out, you can skip this step. If you have a little bit of Freon left, it's against the law to just let it run out into the atmosphere. So we have to bleed our Freon into an approved container, or recycle it basically. So there's a lot of shops that will actually do this for free for you, because you're basically giving them R134A for free, which is very expensive. So I went ahead and just ran down to local auto place, people I know, and they have a machine that evacuated the system for me, because they get to keep all that Freon. So in my case, the system's empty now. So just note, we got to start with an empty system, obviously, so we can, because we're going to be disassembling lines on the AC compressor. So then we're going to need to get this thing off. And if we look down here, it's going to be hard to see. You have two connections, and it's probably easier to see on this one here. Here and here. And there's a pressure port connection here, which is that wiring harness that's sticking off right there. So we'll disconnect that wiring harness. It's just clipped on there. These two connections here and here, you'll need a tool that I'll show you. It's like a Ford fuel line disconnect tool. It reaches in there and moves the spring and lets these lines come apart. So, not hard. And then there's two bolts. It's kind of easy to see on this one again. There's a bolt here, and then that one that I showed you down on the bottom that needs to come out. And this will just drop right out the bottom of the car. Get the new one up in place, bolt it into position. We'll reconnect our hoses. Now is the time, again, you know, your O-rings, there's O-rings that seal these areas here. Now's the time to change those. Because if they didn't leak, you might cause them to start a slow leak by messing with them. They might tear a little bit. So now's the time to change all your O-rings. Alright, so on this top thing here, we'll just pull off, there's this little safety retainer, and it just pulls straight off. It's just in case that fitting were to fail. So here's the spring lock tools that I'm talking about. Just need to find the one that fits that line. Alright, so it is a 3/4 spring lock. You have to really, I find it helps if you put a little bit of like WD-40 or something on there. Once you really work it, you get that pulled up, release the spring. And it will come off. You can see there's the O-rings that I'm talking about. But inside of here see that you can see that little spring. We're just basically sliding this around the pipe. This end here, let's see if I can show you, is what's going in there and compressing that spring. So once we get both of those off, we'll be able to unbolt this and get it out of here. All right, so it's gonna be the same thing with this other line. It's just right below the battery tray. Just enough room, you can get the tool. You can get the tool slid on the line here like this. See that? And we're gonna work at this one. And sometimes it helps to kind of like actually push in on the line while you push that in, and then once you feel it release, then pull the whole line off. All right, so this one is being a little stubborn and not being easy to get off. So this one, same tool, I just popped it off right here, and that connects to there. So once I get this whole assembly unbolted and pulled out, I'll have much easier access to that fitting, so I can, you know, get this hose off and get it transferred over to the new one. All right, so once you get the 3 13mm bolts out, basically I was able to get that top line off and then drop this out the bottom. Let's take a quick look at this. So like I said, when you bought an aftermarket one of these, you can take this off and put it on yourself. And there you can see the problem. This is what always happens to these. So can you believe that that still held some Freon? That's what happens. Just get destroyed. Alright, so again, now we just need to transfer this sensor over right here, and it is just threaded on. So we'll just take that off and transfer that to the new one. Alright, so this has a gasket. Comes with the new O-ring, so you just thread that on. And it's not real tight, we'll just lightly snug it down. Alright, so what I did is I just took that one and poured the oil that was in there into this one. That's how I know. I mean, I lost a little bit of oil, but it was close. So I just topped. You can see I spilled a little bit on the ground. I just put a little bit of oil in there to make up for that. And it actually does give the spec that 7 ounces total of oil should be in the system. But that includes the compressor. So you don't really know how much oil is in the system. So that's why I said pour what's in your old one in here. And then if you lose any, add a little bit. Or if you think you've lost a bunch, just add just a little bit to make up for it. Alright, so we've got our new one put into place here. Got my 3 bolts put back in. So like I said, now would be a good time to change your O-rings. Definitely inspect these. Make sure they're okay. Use a little bit of that oil to put a light coat of oil on there. And then, you know, these just push and lock into place. Don't forget your safety retainers. Get those back on. Once we get everything put back together, we'll go ahead and put a vacuum on the system. And then we'll be ready to charge it. Alright, so you want to get it pushed in until you hear it audibly lock. And then you want to pull, make sure it's actually locked in place. So if you don't get these seated correctly, it's just going to blow apart as soon as we go to charge the system. Alrighty now, so we've got everything hooked up. As I mentioned, it helps to have a set of these manifold gauges for stuff like this. But unfortunately, my low side of my manifold, the fitting that connects is broken. So I'm going to kind of half-ass do this here. So this is going to be turned off. What I'll do is I'll open up my high side, and then I've got this connection here running to my vacuum pump. right here. So I'm going to be vacuuming down the system through the high side here, and then the low side is just closed off. So that will pull a vacuum on the whole thing. I'm going to do that now. The only problem is I won't be able to see. Normally you would read your vacuum on the low side, so I'm not going to be able to see that. My other gauge does not show vacuum either. But what you're looking for is, with your vacuum gauge, you can actually watch it come down, and you want it to come down. You look at, see where it says R134A, to about negative 30 to 40. And the key is you want it to be able to hold a vacuum. That's how you know you don't have leaks. So if I turn off the vacuum pump, it should hold. Or if I shut this valve off, that system should just hold that vacuum, in theory, forever. That's how you know you have no leaks in your system. Once the system is under vacuum, we will disconnect this, being sure not to let any air in. So we'll back it out, and then the system is ready to charge. We do not need the gauges to charge it, although it helps because, again, we can watch our readings, and when the car is running, it will show it's correctly charged. But I'm not going to be able to show you that today, so I'm kind of showing you the do-it-yourself in your driveway method here, the dirty method on how to get this done. Alright, so here's how you'll know you're pulling a good vacuum. I'm going to go ahead and open this and let you hear how it sounds, the vacuum pump. You can hear it, you can physically see the moisture. I don't know if you can see that. It looks like steam being boiled out of the system. So we're just going to let that run like that. Like I said, for about 30 minutes, 20-30 minutes. Alright, so this has been going about a half hour now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and turn off our valve up here first. Close this off. And how these gauges work is, even though you shut the valve off, that just shuts off the connection to the middle point here, okay? The gauge still will read whatever it's connected to. So we're gonna leave that one connected. And for our low side, we'll just use this gauge here. That's how I'll know, my low side pressure. Normally we just do everything right through these gauges, and normally you would then charge the system right through the yellow line here. And there's a couple things that are important. We only charge our system on the low side. We never ever inject our refrigerant through the high side. So we always inject it through the low side. So that's what we'll be doing. In our case, like I said, I'm not even going to be using the manifold set. You can get a pretty nice, package deal that includes a vacuum pump and a set of manifold gauges for right around $100 to $140 for the whole setup for everything. So I'll be sure to leave a link in the description below where you can get that. That's probably what I would do. If you don't have any of this stuff, just go ahead, spend the money one time. You should never need to buy it again. I unfortunately, I've had this for probably going on 15 to 20 years now. It was a Harbor Freight setup, and just like one of my knobs broke off, and then like I said, my low pressure side, the gasket went out inside of it, and it's just not even worth, this is like a $30 part here, so it's not even worth really fixing that. So I'll just keep these hoses and stuff for spare parts. But I'm gonna go ahead and get this charged up now. So this is my little charge line here. So this is what screws onto the top of the can. I'll go ahead and connect this to here. So normally we would thread that on to our vacuum connection. So I'll take our first can, and you want to make sure that this is backed all the way out at first, like that. And these newer cans, some of them have this top. Normally you used to pierce that and then, you know, the can, you could never take it off. Well, now, any unused portion, you can actually unscrew this because it's got this little like stopper valve here. Kind of like a recent thing in the last few years they've added to this. So then, if we turn this in, that's where it would pierce the can, as you can see in the old days. Now, it just depresses that valve and opens it. So what we'll do is we'll stick this on here like this. We'll get it to where it's almost on there, and then we're going to take the air out of the line just by bumping it a little bit of Freon, and then we'll connect it there. Alright, so now so if you have a can that doesn't have that stopper, you'll turn it all the way and then turn it back out. You'll hear it start flowing into the system. And now is where you're going to want to start the car and turn it on max AC in your highest fan setting. Obviously I need to get this stuff out of the way first. Alright, now it's short cycling, so what that means is the compressor will run for a second. You can watch the pulley and you'll feel the can getting cold. You want to leave it in this direction until you feel like it's almost empty, and then I'll turn it over and let it empty out. Kind of shake it. Like I said, once it feels like it's empty, the old way would have been just to turn this all the way in until it's shut off. Like I said, on these newer cans, you can do that, or you can turn it all the way out. It doesn't really matter. Okay. That's one can. We know we need 2 full cans. Then we'll take our next can, make sure that's all the way out. Get that threaded on there. I want to get the air out of the line. You see, when the compressor kicks on is when you start to feel the can start to empty as it's drawing it in. And as it gets more into the system, the compressor will run longer, especially when it's a hot day like this. I'm watching my high pressure gauge. Can't tell a whole lot yet. After I put this can in, I'll put it in the low pressure gauge and I'll show you what it looks like. Alright, so I'm all ready with 2 cans. I've got nice ice cold air coming out. So we're getting there. And my AC clutch is constantly engaged. That's another good sign. So I told you I put this gauge on here. I'll show you. Alright. So you can see if we were in the green, we'd be low. Blue, it says we're filled. We're yellow, we're too high. So it says we're good, but I'm going to go ahead and put in a little bit more. I want to kind of put it right in the middle of that blue. So I'm going to charge it up just a little bit more. There's actually a formula you look up for what the ambient air temperature is right now. When you're using your manifold gauges correctly, this isn't real accurate here. It'll show you what your pressure should be on your high side and your low side. And that's how you know exactly when you have the right amount of Freon. It's based on the outdoor air temperature and your pressure on your high side and your low side. So I'll try to lay that graph over the video here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more of that third can. So you don't want to put too much in. Remember, we're only trying to add 3 ounces of this into the system. So I'm just gonna put this on here for a few seconds. I'll shut it off. And say we're about where we need to be here. Alright, so if you can see, but I'm right in the middle filled area now. I've got a little bit more Freon in there. My clutch is constantly engaged. If this were to be dropping and then your clutch goes off and then it kicks back in and then it kicks off again, you'd want to add more Freon until it's just running continuously like this. So we are right where I want to be. Got ice cold air coming out. All right, so that's kind of the quick and dirty way to get that evaporator changed out. The same thing if you're changing the compressor. Kind of have to go through the same process of, you know, removing your hoses, checking everything out. Make sure you put your caps back on when you're done. Just understand that without vacuuming the system, you know, they sell a lot of this DIY stuff at the auto parts stores where, you know, basically you can just change that out and, you know, buy a can that has a gauge right on it, something like this, right, built onto it, and, you know, shoot it in there. The problem is, like I said, you have air in your system. It's going to destroy your car. If you want to just, you know, get by for a minute, it works, but you're doing damage. You were ruining your compressor. Okay, so if you want to do it right, somewhat right, you got to vacuum down the system. That's what boils off all the moisture inside and gets it cleared out, and it doesn't cost that much to do it right. And it's definitely, you know, if you spend $140 to buy a setup that includes a vacuum pump and, you know, your manifold set, then you're just going to have, you know, $5 to $10 a can in this stuff, so $30 more than whatever the price for your, you know, evaporator. Price that compared to having it done at, you know, a mechanic, or especially the Ford dealer, and you'll see. So you spend that money that one time and you're still coming in way under the price of having someone else do it. Then you can do it on the rest of your cars from then on, and you'll have no expense. You'll just have, you know, your Freon or whatever part you're replacing. So just keep that in mind. That's why we DIY a lot of stuff like this. Hopefully the video was helpful. If you have any questions, be sure to leave a comment. If the video helped you, like the video, subscribe for more. And like I said, I'll put links in the description to all the parts that I use and stuff that I recommend to use. Again, I apologize, you know, kind of for the half-assed method that I showed here, but it's because some of my equipment broke on me right in the middle of the video. But it worked out because I was able to show you kind of an even dirtier way to do this. So, till next time, we'll see you later.